Good afternoon, and welcome to the OLED Consulting Monthly PM Roundtable. My name is Adeyemi. I'm your host and CEO at OLED Consulting. If you're joining us for the first time, OLED Consulting is a management consulting firm. We specialize in IT professional services in the areas of staffing, training, and project delivery services. So we do connect IT professionals to opportunities within the industry. We also provide training and employment placement services for individuals that are looking to get into the fields of project management, business analysis, and agile delivery services. Our mandate for the PM Roundtable is to create a forum, a platform where our IT professional community can share information, network, discuss industry trends, and present an opportunity for career growth. Essentially, our goal is to raise leaders, and we definitely hope that today's roundtable will further that agenda. At this point, I'm going to ask all the panelists to please turn on their cam as we're about to get started. Okay, thank you. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about agile leadership and developing a product mindset. Now, we have a great group of panelists on the call with us today that will be sharing their experience, talking about how you can navigate within your organization as an agile professional, as well as being someone with a product mindset. Now, the concept of what is a product mindset, we're going to get to this question. There's a lot that we're going to be unpacking on this call today. But before we get into this conversation, we're going to start with some introduction. Get to know the panelists, what their experiences are, where they're coming from. So the first panelist I'm going to be introducing today is Segun Agbata. Welcome, Segun.
Thank you very much, Ade. Nice to meet everybody on. My name is Segun Agbata. Like Ade said, I'm originally from Nigeria. I've been in the United States for over 20 years, and I'm a chemical engineer by training. I thought I was going to end up in oil and gas, but my career, just took me into the CPG consumer goods world. And I'll share this now because it's going to be connected through the thread of our conversations. Is one of the things that really caught my attention and captured my passion for the consumer goods world was the idea of working on a product that you could see on shelf and also see the impact to the end user consumer in terms of efficacy and efficiency and impact to the consumer's overall well-being. And so I've been in the consumer goods beauty industry for most of my career. I've worked in manufacturing, I've worked in supply chain, and I've worked in product development. I've also worked across geographies, both in the US, across states, and also in Asia and China. So more to come as we go on, but I currently live in New York City with my family, and we enjoy the Harlem neighborhood.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for the introduction, Segun. We're excited to hear from you and what you've got to share regarding your the wealth of experience that you're bringing to the table. Going to go next to the next panelist we're going to be introducing. Is Seti Nizami. Welcome, Seti.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So glad to be here. My name is Seti Nizami. I have been working in product over the past 10 years of my career. I've always been in SaaS, currently based off of Canada. I'm working at Sangoma as the VP of Product Management, leading multiple product managers and our design teams. My biggest strength, I can say, is leading without authority across cross-functional teams. I always embrace the fact that multiple teams should be able to communicate without any fear, and always embrace that kind of collaboration effort. This is something that all product managers will be benefiting from down the road. We're going to talk more about this in our call later today. But yeah, happy to be here, and yeah.
Excellent. Well, excited to have you on the call, Seti, and looking forward to getting into this conversation with you. So the final panelist, we're going to be last but not the least. We're going to be introducing Venkata Kumar. Thanks for joining us, Venkata.
Thank you, Eric. Firstly, thank you for Olari Consulting for giving me an opportunity to be here. Hello to all current and future leaders in this forum. My name is Venkat. I work as delivery director at Publicis Sapient Toronto office. We've been in the IT industry for about 23-24 years, and I have led large teams across multiple verticals ranging from retail, utilities, energy, and whatnot. I'm currently in retail. Just helping my clients become leaders is really my passion and obsession, right? Or help them achieve unprecedented outcomes. In my role, I've sort of played roles where I have to directly work with C-level partners and whatnot. More than everything, what drives me is sort of working with people, getting them to get adjusted to agile ways of thinking and working, and just being able to help teams and clients make that transformation is what really drives me. And in that perspective, I'm very, very happy to be here if any of my experiences is valuable in any way to this forum, right? So looking forward for a great conversation. Great to meet you all today.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Venkata. And we're also excited to have you on the call, and we're looking forward to learning from you, from the wealth of knowledge. We have a huge community of Agile professionals on the call today. I will be looking forward to learning from you. As we move along, we're going to be talking about this conversation today is going to be around product delivery, agile leadership. We're going to talk about some of the concept of agility. How can you achieve flexibility while also being innovative? How do we ensure that our work is iterative and we can adapt to change? But at the same time, we're customer-centric. We're focusing on the client, the end goal. Some of the different concepts of user journey mapping. How do you ensure the product is the right fit to the market? Is going to be an exciting conversation here. You know what? I'm going to let you hear from panelists. So we're going to get into the conversation right away. We're going to exit the presentation mode, and we get into the full presentation, the full conversation, and ensure that we're missing one panelist. I'm going to make sure to have Seti back here. Perfect. Okay, we're ready to go, ready to roll. Okay. First of all, we're going to get into the conversation around. Let's get into the concept of product mindset and agile leadership. Now, the first question I have is to you, Segun. Segun, question is, what is a product mindset? And how can individuals and teams develop a product mindset that supports agility and innovation?
It's a good question, Ade, and it's loaded. So I'm going to do my best to try to dissect it and break it down. So if we start with what is a product mindset, right? So I'll just go with Forbes defines it as a product mindset is a value-driven, not completion-driven mindset. It's anchored in care and empathy for the customer, the consumer, your stakeholders. And the idea of a product mindset for me really helps you to focus on what are you really trying to add value or build value for, right? And so in my world, the product mindset is really thinking about the end use consumer, right? How do you want them to experience this product? How do you want it to perform for them? And how do you want it to also impact the environment that we all live in today, right? With sustainability, said another way, sustainability is the mindset there. So thinking about the product, thinking about the consumer experience, thinking about the impact to the consumer, how it's going to be and in terms of end user, and of course, all the different stakeholders along the value chain who are either extracting value, right, or adding value to it to help optimize that product for optimal experience and optimal satisfaction by the consumer. Now, when you think about agile leadership, right, it's being able to bring your teams who are in different with different stakes, right, in terms of collaboration, innovation, feedback, ideation, and creating a space with tools to be able to optimize that product development, right, and not just assuming that you're going to make the perfect product the first time, but it's about understanding that you're building the product with the consumer in mind, with the tools and innovations you have available to you, and leaving room for iteration to continue to improve, optimize over time. And so it's really building it with that mindset to be able to say, hey, how do I get feedback as I make this product from my immediate stakeholders, my immediate functional teams that are helping to build the product, as well as how do I get feedback from the consumer down the line, eventually to continue to iterate, optimize that product. So we think of it in my world as product life management, right? You're constantly aware of the products you've already put out in market. And as you go to innovate new products, how do you take the learnings from that product you've already built out, your postmortems, your post-evaluations, assessments, analysis, to make sure that this next innovation is going out with those optimizations or improvements already built into it. And so that agile leadership ability and being able to equip everybody along the chain, every stakeholder who has input, allows you to be able to get the best impact and improvement to your product. And so that's kind of how I would define it in my world. But hopefully that answered the two main questions you called out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Shegun. That's really insightful. And it's interesting when you talk about customer feedback and it's, when we talk about products, and often the biggest challenge people have, at least from what I've experienced, is incorporating customer feedback into product development. And we're very locked in our own mindset, our own thinking of what the product should look like. But I think in order to create value, as you mentioned, the key word is value creation. You have to incorporate those customer feedbacks. And I like the fact that you talk about value chain and customer centric, and the word that you use around product life management, because it's an ongoing exercise of constantly seeking feedback and also incorporating that into the entire Agile team, which requires collaboration and in a culture that promotes I guess flexibility, innovation, as well as transparency.
Well said. Well said. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, we're going to keep it going. I mean, there's a lot to unpack on the call today. We're going to keep it going. I'm going to move on to you, Seti. Seti, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your wealth of knowledge and your leadership when it comes to Agile, and both product management is of great value to this conversation we're having today. So my question for you, Seti, is how has your experience in both Agile and product management influenced your approach to leadership? And that's part one. Part two of the question is, how can organizations and teams benefit from combining both Agile and product management principles?
Yeah, thank you so much, A, for having me. I think they go both hand in hand. So my experience both in Agile and product management greatly influenced my kind of approach to leadership, because Agile really focuses on collaboration, teamwork, adaptability to any type of changes, and continuous improvement. So you keep iterating on what you're working on, you get feedback, as Shegun mentioned, just seeking that kind of feedback from customers, validating what you have been thinking, or your assumption, is it correct based on what you have been focused to build for the market and customer. And at the same time, product management helped us being more focused on the customer needs, staying more focused on the outcomes of what we are delivering to the market, and also driving the innovation. So these principles, I think it allowed me personally lead my teams to be more customer centric, more focused on what kind of problems they are solving, rather than just, okay, we have a new feature ready to be released. End customer, end user, they don't really care about the new features as much as we do in the product management role. And they are looking for ways that we can help them resolve their day-to-day kind of issues, or solve a problem for them, make their life easier, and helping them as business owners, for example, how they can run their businesses more efficiently. So that's the focus I think we can get from the product management mindset, plus the agility and adaptability to the change, to this ever-changing market. It could help leaders in product management will drive overall roadmap and strategy more successful. So I think your other question about how organizations can benefit from combining Agile and product management, if they can foster a culture that innovation and agility is the key, and then focus on better outcome rather than just new features or new releases, it would be more driving them toward the success at the end. And this really emphasizes on cross-functional team communication. It's not just a product manager working in silos. Us in product board, we have to communicate with different kind of stakeholders, both internally and externally, learning from marketing team, learning from support, learning from sales, understanding the limitation or new technologies when we're talking to engineering team. All in all, working together as a cross-functional team, and then capturing customer feedback, it could help us like be outcome driven and leading us to a successful business. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, so much to unpack there, Seti. Thanks so much. I love the fact that you mentioned the business owner, the business team, because this is really critical for us to engage when we're talking about the engagement of running an agile team. And I also, love the fact that you talked about cross-functional teams. A lot of our audience today are folks that are in the project management space, folks that are in the business analysis space, folks that are agile leaders or folks are agile professionals, and some of the things that you talked about is really important because when you talk about how we prioritize features and how we deliver value, the releases, it's really important. I think I would love to go into more about the releases, but you know what? We're going to go to Venkat. Venkat, we're glad to have you on the call. Thanks again, Seti. Question for you, Venkat. We're talking about agile principles and agile leadership. And for yourself, someone like yourself, you're a coach, and you've done coaching over many years, providing value to several organizations. Now, how can individuals and teams apply these agile leadership principles, to their work to achieve great team performance and project success? You're on mute, Venkat.
Sorry about that. Great question, Adi. Again, it's a loaded one. Before I answer the question on how organization can apply the leadership principles, right? Let's just spend a minute on the leadership principles themselves, right? A very quick introduction, right, or an overview. So the leadership principles are broadly have three pillars. Everything around communication based, commitment based, and collaboration. Communication is all about, hey, how can the team be more action oriented, a very outcome oriented thinking, open to feedback and whatnot. Commitment is about finding a purpose to the overall goals and what the team is trying to do, right? And to be in an environment where the teams are fearless, they're able to express themselves openly. And then you also need to understand that leadership can come from anywhere. Everyone's a leader in their own way and space, right? And finally, collaboration is all about empowerment. The thinking to co-create together, and the fact that to believe that ideas can come from anywhere. Correct. Now, if you think about how organizations can use this, right? We've talked about. I see a hand raised. Okay, I think it's more an acknowledgement. I think. Okay, I'll keep moving. So if you look at organizations trying to make a transformation, trying to make a change, right? You cannot make the change if there is no action. You cannot make a change if you're not orient your thinking to outcome based, right? And for teams and organizations, none of this is going to happen if there is no handshaking, if there's no teams working together, if you're not open to feedback, if you're not able to open to the idea of co-creating together and be open to the ideas that ideas can come from anywhere and so on, right? In a way, all the leadership principles forge a process of action orientation, which organizations can hugely benefit, right? And I can talk about one or two examples. I know a client of mine, who were struggling, they were on the verge of going out of business, and a very agile thinking and practice helped them move from on the verge of getting out of the market to actually increasing their digital revenues by over 300% in a matter of 7 to 8 months. And all that was required was a way in changing their thinkings, in connecting to an overall purpose and putting all of that into action, right? In fact, all of these leadership principles is not relevant just for corporate organizations and teams, and even in our own personal lives and families and whatnot. These principles are so deeply rooted that we all can benefit from in a sort of using them and getting a change for us.
Well,
Hope and wait.
I think you're spot on, Venkata. I think, when you talk about some of these leadership principles and you talk about collaboration and co-creating solution, which is essential to an effective agile team, and you talk about some of those handshakes, and there are different groups involved, and I think one of the biggest challenges people face, and I'm speaking to the IT professionals on the call. You have challenges with your dev guys and your dev team, and how do we facilitate these handshakes and ensuring that while co-creating the solution, you're ensuring that you're getting feedback from your product owner and also carrying everybody along. This is exciting. We can get into more details and the technicalities of this conversation. I'm so excited. As much as we are excited, we would like to hear from you, the participants. So please share your thoughts in the chat, share your questions. We would like to, if you have any specific questions to the panelists, you'd like us to direct to the panelists, feel free to share those questions. We'd love to hear from you. As we're moving on, we're going to keep this conversation flowing. I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to come back to you, Seti. Seti, my next question is for you, and this is around, the balancing act. From an agile and product delivery standpoint, balancing the need for speed and agility with a focus on delivering value can be pretty challenging. So the question is, as a leader in this field, how have you approached this challenge in your experience, and what are some of the strategies that you find effective for achieving both speed and value?
Yeah, I think that's a very legit kind of challenge. All of us feel it on a daily basis as the PM world. So I think the key to find that balance between speed, agility, and while we are also delivering that kind of value is to have a very clear understanding of our customer needs and business goals. I think once we have that, then we can focus to have a better understanding of the market, the competition, our customers, and all in all together help us drive that organization goal at the end. So I think to get there, we need to have all this in place before we can even look into the potential value that our product roadmap or product decision will be providing. So understanding that can help us get to defining our roadmap in a timely manner and assign resources to different kind of objectives that we define. So one way that I found it to be helpful, at least for my team, is to kind of breaking down every work that I'm planning to do in a smaller chunks and making sure we can do this deliveries frequently and quickly. So this really helps different teams to be able to test things in a timely manner, iterate on it if they made some mistakes or failed in the first time, and quickly adapt to it. It's part of the agility, right? And then because we are getting feedback from our customers and then see if we did it right in the first time or wrong, we can adopt and then change, and it helps us move towards that value at the end that we are all hoping for. So encouraging the kind of risk-taking culture in a team, I think it's really helpful to establish that kind of mindset in the team. So they're not really afraid of making mistakes or having any failure, because we always iterate on it and then get back to it and fix it and get back to the customer. So that kind of culture of experimenting, I think it's really helpful to find that balance. And yeah, so at the end, I think choosing the right tools and process can also help, because you might be doing the right thing, but because you do not have well-established process in place or tools that can help you be agile or speedy, driving towards that value could slow you down. So for things like automated testing, having continuous deployment, and ways to actually see the process going on an automated way can help deliver value in a timely manner, and we can combine speed and value at the same time.
Well, that's really exciting, and it is interesting. There's some technicalities to it: automated testing, automated deployment.
Yeah.
speed, and to achieve that speed and value. And I think on in the foundation of all this is having clear understanding of the customer needs and the business objective.
Exactly.
Those are really critical. I love the fact that you talk about road mapping as well, because these are some of the technicalities involved when it comes to effective delivery, having a clear roadmap or your product roadmap. And you also talked about breaking your delivery into chunks, small chunks that can be easily managed and delivered by the team. We talked about some of the time boxing exercise involved in that process. There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Seti. We're gonna go to Venkat. Shengu, we'll come to you, Shengu. We're gonna go to Venkat next. Venkat, I guess question for you. We're talking about challenges faced by agile teams. Now, what are some of the biggest challenges individuals and teams face when trying to implement agile leadership principles, and how can they overcome those challenges?
Sure. Great question, Ari. So just to reiterate, the three pillars of agile leadership principles based around communication, commitment and collaboration. Now, the challenges, I'd like to split them at three levels, right? One is at an individual level, one at a team's level, and the third at an organizational level, right? Now, at an individual level, some of the challenge that I often see with people is two dimensions, right? One is to first have a clear understanding of the leadership principles themselves, because they need to be absorbed, they need to be understood, they need to be experienced, and there's a combination of things that need to be done at an individual level before one can say that, hey, I can identify with these leadership principles, right? There's a phase to, with individuals being able to absorb these leadership principles, right? That's the first challenge that I see. Correct. The second challenge at a team's level is, while all these leadership principles are there, every team goes through its evolution, right? A team is not formed overnight. Well, sometimes magic happens, but many times the magic takes time to happen, right? So the challenge is, while teams get together, how can they keep abreast of the leadership principles and try and imbibe them, right? When the overall team itself is getting evolved and getting formed, right? Going to the form, storm, norm phases of team, right? So that's a challenge. I think at an organizational level, many times the challenge that I've seen is, you've got the agile leadership principles, there's so much to it, but every organization has its own DNA, right? Has its own set of core values, correct? Now, how can organizations keep their core values and at the same time adopt the leadership principles and sort of marry them together and create something meaningful for their people is another challenge, right? Now, just to summarize my response, there are challenges at an individual level in terms of absorbing and understanding the leadership principles, teams being able to employ leadership principles while teams get matured themselves, and thirdly, at an organizational level, organizations have their own core values. How can they sort of unionize or integrate their own core values with these leadership principles, right? Roughly, these are the three biggest challenges that I often run into when I work with my clients and teams and people across, right?
Oh, thank you so much, Venkat. And I think this is really profound, challenges that teams go through when it comes to incorporating these agile principles. The team is going to go through this evolution. It's really difficult when you bring a group of people together. We're constantly innovating. We're constantly, and that's why we have those retrospective, the sprint retrospective, where it's a feedback opportunity for the team to evaluate what is working, what isn't working, how can we be more effective with our delivery processes, and the piece that you talked about, which is at the organizational level, and it's interesting because we also provide consulting services for organizations that are looking to implement agile delivery services, processes. And one of the biggest challenges is merging those organizational core values with those agile principles, because everybody wants to move into this agile space today, but then the question is, how do we ensure that we're combined, we're still staying true to those principles? Lots to unpack here, guys. We're gonna keep it moving. We're gonna come to you now, Segun. Segun, question for you is quite loaded actually, and we're gonna get to it. How can individuals and teams strike a balance between meeting short-term needs and pursuing long-term goals when faced with competing priorities? I think this is kind of like juggling act of, short-term needs and long-term goals. What are some specific strategies or tools that can be used to prioritize work effectively and ensure that progress is being made towards the bigger picture?
It's a good question. And I'm going to build off of what Venkata and Seti have kind of touched on, is really this idea of a shared framework, right? So you, as an organization, right, you usually have your organizational frame, and that framework is really key, right? And then you need to have taken that framework from like the larger organizational one-liner to like take it into pieces at the team level and at the individual level, right? And so when you have that built framework, if you don't have that, you need to kind of have that, right? Because that helps in those moments where you have this short-term crisis that you have to address. It helps you to kind of maintain your true north, right? So it helps you to ask your questions, the question, where are we trying to go? Because you already have this sort of long-term strategy as to where we want to be in the long term. And so that way you can feel comfortable operating in the short and midterm range on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. If not, if you have to always kind of revisit that larger framework, and then you find yourself shifting it, right? Because you find yourself questioning it. But once you've set that framework and it's clear where we're going as an organization, then it helps the teams and the individuals to be able to have their own smaller size, bite-sized frameworks and goals and objectives that they're looking to deliver. So when those crises come, you can refer to that shared framework to say, is this in line with the shared framework that we want to operate with in the short term? Now, that's kind of high level, right? So if I bring it down just to make it a little practical, right? If you think about, some of the practical tools you can put in place are really the weekly, daily stand-up meetings. They're not expected to be long. They're not supposed to be heavy. The idea is really to come and make it solution-based, decision-based, problem resolution type meetings. And so having these touch points, which touch on collaboration and communication, really helps the teams to know, okay, if we have a short-term crisis, what is the true resolution we need here? And how does that tie into the mid to long-term objectives that we're trying to achieve? And so you have that constant practice connection with long-term, but really operating in the short-term deliverables, because the long-term is not going to deliver for you today what your consumer or customer needs from you, right? So it's really being able to say, okay, what is the crisis we need to address? What are the solution options, right? Which come from that collaborative team that already exists on what's the best way to get to this end result. And then you need somebody, usually the decision can come, the recommendations can come from multiple stakeholders, but you need a decision maker on that team that's going to say, okay, I've heard the different point of views, I've heard the different perspectives, and for the short-term objectives we have in place, here's the decision we should take. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, right? It should be directionally accurate, right? But it doesn't have to be precise. And the idea is, goes back to the points that have been made already about iteration, right? So you learn from it, you take that decision, and the goal is to optimize it, knowing that you may not be perfect at the first time. If you knock it out the park, great. You learn from that and you record it, but it just means that, but being able to idea it together and have that touch point, either on a daily basis, weekly basis, based on the way your organization is set up and the level of autonomy and independence that exists. So for us, usually we're probably more on a weekly basis, but when I go back to like my manufacturing experience, it was on a daily basis based on if we had a launch coming and we had to get to market, it was a daily review of 15 minutes huddle. It's a stand-up meeting and we talk about it. We resolve what needs to be done to get through it. Sometimes we'll start with something very unrefined with a vision within the next week, within the next month to automate it. I love what Seti said about automation, like to automate it, right? So the first time may be manual because you need to get it out the door, but within a week, within a month, you want to get to that place where you're automating, you're optimizing, you're improving, because that's how you get efficiencies to be able to balance the push-pull and the dilemma of wanting to serve your customer immediately, but also not wanting to burn out your stakeholders in terms of your team. So I'll pause with that, but I think I answered most of that question, but happy to go a little deeper.
I need to unmute myself. That's amazing. Thanks so much, Segun. There's a lot to unpack. I think I love the fact that you shared it's a balancing act of understanding the short-term and long-term goals, and being able to prioritize. It's again, thank you so much for sharing. This is great. We do have a question in the chat. I think there's a phrase Belogo that shared a question, and there are 3 questions. I'm not sure how many of the questions we can get to, but we'll start with the first one. First question, and this question we're going to keep it open to anyone of the panelists that can that wants to chime in. The first question there is, what are some of your biggest or best failures in your respective practices that have influenced your approach to product management and or leading / influencing teams? I'm not sure who wants to take that one. So question is, what are some of your biggest failures in your respective practices that have influenced your approach to product management and or leading / influencing teams?
I can take that one. So I have a real life experience early on when I started my journey as a product manager. We were about to launch a new product. And of course, as a product manager, you want to have like all customers happy, make sure all the features that you had in mind, it's out there. So I kept iterating on the kind of features, adding more to it again and again, and hold off on releasing the product. So I almost lost the time to market piece to it. So when we were ready to launch it, it was already too late, and most of our customer base at that point already acquired another competitors that they found in the market, or they didn't find the value because they have found another kind of approach outside the kind of offering that we had. So the biggest lesson learned for me in that scenario was to, whenever you have an idea or something to like test the water, just focus on the MVP, get feedback, and then work on it like iteration. So this is another kind of way to emphasize on the agile methodology. So go with smaller chunks, start with small, and get feedback. You're on right track, perfect. You go to stage 2. If you have failed or you're completely off, you learn from your customers, you learn from your kind of market, and you can iterate and fix it.
Well, thank you so much, Seti. I'm not sure if Venkat, you want to chime in there. I was hoping to direct the next question to you. There are 3 questions here. Feel free to chime in, but I do have the next question. The next question here is, what is your approach to leading and working effectively with designers, engineers, and other contributors within the product process?
Yeah, I can pick it up. So the question is, what is your approach to leading and working effectively with designers, engineers, and other contributors in the product process? Great question. If I put myself, let's say, in the shoe of either a coach or a release trained engineer, is typically a role that would encompass working with all of these cross-functional teams, correct? Here's my recommendation for an approach, right, when working with cross-functional teams. And then again, I'll tie it back to the leadership principles, correct? The first step of the approach is really to make sure all your cross-functional teams clearly understand the purpose, and the why and what of the product that we are trying to build, right? Like, why is the product being built? Who is the customer? Like, from a business perspective, why is this team or organization trying to build that product? What does it mean for the end customer? What value does it bring, right? I think it's important first for all of these cross-functional teams to clearly understand and align with that big purpose, right? I think the second step to the approach, and that's very personal for me and it's worked well for me, is to just be able to find a way to get all of these cross-functional teams to be together, right? And that's an element of building relationships, an element of finding a way where these teams can coexist together and just build a sense of camaraderie, right? I mean, all the team software aspects, correct? The third approach is, I'll call it the triple E's, right? Enablement, empowerment with empathy, right? Just being able to get the three E's to this entire team, because everybody has ideas, everybody has potential, but the thing is, we need to create an environment where we're all empathetic with each other, right? We empower each of these teams to do what they have to do, correct? And and give them the ownership, right? Like, give them the space to be able to do what they have to do, right? I think if we can, in summary, align the teams with the why, give them the space to feel empowered, and build some personal relationships so that they can relate to you and you can relate to them. I think if you can achieve these three, then you set the team out to build what they have to do, right? Most teams, when they have clarity, clarity is everything, right? If they have clarity and they have the space to do what they have to do, they'll run on their own, right? And I think that's the whole goal of agile teams too, right? Self-organized teams, right? The goal, how do we get teams to be self-organized, right? And the answer is, show them the why, give them the space, and let them know that you are there for them, right? That's about it, in my opinion. There's more, of course, right? I'm just trying to summarize it and keep it as sharp as possible, right?
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Venkat. And I love the fact that you shared the three E's: enablement, empowerment, empathy. It's very critical. And on top of that, you can also talk about emotional intelligence. As agile professionals, employing those skills is really important in terms of getting to deliver value. Now, we're going to get you to chime in as well, Segun. The third question, I'm not sure if you're able to speak to this one. I'm pretty sure this is definitely within your wheelhouse. Again, feel free to chime in on the previous three questions. The third question here is, in what ways do you think AI, artificial intelligence, might change the product management process in the future?
So that's good. That's good. I've actually just recently, probably in the last year or so, we actually asked ourselves this question, right? How do we leverage AI? How do we leverage data to optimize our product development, product innovation, and really deliver to consumer in the journey, right? And so we've actually been iterating and working on this. So I can probably draw on a few examples. There are many angles you can use AI on, right? So when you think about the whole value chain, supply chain of product development, product management, I know I'm speaking more of a physical product, but it all applies, right? And it's actually been very interesting for me is really, it's all about a feedback loop, right? And how to use AI, one, to first of all, understand what's out there, and then use that available data set to start to design experiments that help you iterate for optimization. And again, based on that, right, you can then start to optimize not just your product, but how your product is delivered along the value chain. So for me, I'm really excited about the promise of AI, actually, even though we're not seeing it fully, but I believe it's available to us to, one, help with design of experiment. If you design the right experiments to test your products, with the amount of data that's already out there, you can get very close. You can get a lot closer than you were before from small subsets of data in terms of consumer focus groups and things like that, to be able to understand how is the consumer going to experience this product, right? Because most things that, if you think about most of the products that you use, it's really how did they make you feel when you were done using them, right? Or while you use them, what was that experience like? Did it perform well? And then when you were done using it, how did it make you feel in terms of how does it impact the environment? So when you think about those sort of three levels of sustainability, of consumer experience, of product performance, and you tie that back to what is important to you as an organization in terms of cost, quality, speed, safety, agility in a sense, you can see those things merging with AI because you have data that you can iterate with, you can experiment with, you can do designers of experiments to see what are some of the outcomes that could come from this path or the other path. And with that, you can then be a little bit more decisive and probably more accurate and precise in getting the right product into the hands of the consumer that check most of those boxes. So that's the promise I see for AI. I'm really excited about what AI can do. And it's one of those areas I've been trying to understand more and more. So I'm sure from the product management world where you actually don't have to get a consumer to touch it, use it, you can do a lot of behind the scenes exploration from what I've learned from my IT counterparts in terms of being to say when they get a product, say for example, they're using a time management tool, how are they using that tool? How many times are they opening it? How many times are they coming to check back, and how much triggers is it creating for consumers or the users to be able to really make the most of that, say, timeline management. So that's some of the things that I've gotten feedback on. So I've been able to provide feedback on. So I'll pause there. Hopefully that answers that question. But the other question about failures, if I can just touch on that, one of the things that I've seen that you can find as a failure is kind of touching on what Seti said, is getting stuck with trying to perfect, right? Trying to perfect. Meanwhile, you're losing business, like in terms of revenue, right? Because the longer you hold on to the product, the higher the risk of somebody else being able to put another product out there and beat you to market. And there's something to be said about first to market, right? First to market usually gains credibility and can then optimize and get consumer feedback and quickly iterate. So that's one that I always try to encourage people. Don't get stuck trying to perfect it, but really think about if you have something that meets safety standards, quality standards, that can be out in the market for you to get feedback from the consumer, you're generating revenue, and you're also generating feedback and generating credibility.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing that, Shego. It's interesting. The part that I really love is the concept of using AI for market research, and you've seen the likes of ChatGPT. If you're into market research, ChatGPT, you can quickly navigate, conduct those market research, get data that would require a great deal of time to collect. Then now you have AI doing that work for you with that much more speed, with a great speed to get that data and information back. And the part where you talked about, perfecting a product, I think most product teams have a difficulty in this area because we're constantly getting feedback. And we talk about the concept that Agile is very change-oriented, and you have the scenarios where the product owner and the product team was providing feedback. And one of the questions that we've asked in the past is, and we talk to our teams about, is how do you ensure, at what point do you put a stop to the constant feedbacks and ensure that you're able to deliver your product within the set time box period, versus having to keep reiterating and making those changes? Venkat, I'm sure it feels like you want to chime in here.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Please go ahead.
Sure. So just to make sure I understand the question, the question is, hey, where do we draw a line? Feedback will keep coming. Where do we draw a line and make sure things are done? Right. Great question. It's a challenge that we all run in all the time. Correct. And in my opinion, so two things, Ade, right? Feedback will never stop. As long as the world is alive, there is going to be feedback. Correct. But we have the choice of doing two things, right? One, to be able to prioritize that feedback and see what's really important for us and for the customer. Correct. I think prioritization is a great tool. It's such an important, imminent, critical tool to be employed at all time horizons, right? Be it over a year of planning, or over a month of a planning, or a week of planning. Even when you're doing a cutover, prioritization is so important to focus on what is important, right? What is critical, correct? So to answer your question, yeah, feedback will keep coming. What we need to do is, in my opinion, look at what's important, what's critical, implement and make that decision together with the team in the best interest of the business and the customer, and keep moving, right? It's very, very important to keep moving. It's a world where the train of feedback will not stop, the train of changes will not stop, and the evolution of customer needs will not stop. It's not going to stop. It's always changing. Change is imminent, but the power and the ability and the choice of seeing what part of that feedback is important and how do we prioritize, and sort of see how do we convert that feedback, prioritize, and convert it into something meaningful action is important.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Venkat. And thank you, Faiza, for those great questions. We're going to keep the show going. We'll move on to the final round of questions. And I'm going to stay with you here, Venkat. And as we're going through this final round of questions, I just want to, again, just want to appreciate the wealth of knowledge that we've been privy to on this call. I really, really appreciate this great group of panelists and the wealth of knowledge that they've shared on the call. This is exciting, and there's still a lot more to go. We have some amazing questions as we're going to this final round of questions, and this is going to be another round of key takeaways. So stay tuned, stay with us. We're still cooking. So my question for you, Venkat, is what are some practical strategies that individuals and teams can utilize to stay current with the latest trends and best practices in Agile? And how can they leverage this knowledge to consistently enhance their processes, methodologies, or continuous learning and improvement over time? It's a loaded question. If you want, I can go over it again, but I'm sure you have it covered.
No, that's okay. I can summarize the question again. Hey, how can teams and individuals sort of use the best practices in their space, right? Of within the space of leadership principles, right? So I'll tie back to where teams face challenges, right? Now at an individual level, there's a plethora of choices and sources of information available, right? That we can learn, be it from social media or from coaches and whatnot, right? Teams can learn from different organizations, right? Both small and big. So what I was saying is teams and organizations can learn from other successful organizations, right? Be it small or big. Some of the examples that come to my mind is Spotify. About 5 to 6 years back, the whole model of Agile at scale that they implemented is a fascinating journey, right? And all the videos are actually available in the in the open source forums, even on YouTube, right? I think we can learn from there. Looking at the latest, some of the most latest revivals, for example, the way Microsoft has turned its, their entire journey around cloud is a classic example of employing agile leadership principles, right? Last but not the least, right? There is help around the world. There are passionate people who are willing to come down, talk to teams, talk to organizations, and coach, right? So there's plenty of sources available. Last but not the least, the best source of knowledge and information is our own people within the teams, right? We have a frame. As long as we ask our people what they need, what they want, I think there's a lot of ideas that we can tap from our own teams, right, in terms of learning. Correct? Again, there's no end. It's a continuous journey. We need to be open to where the learnings can come from. Remember, ideas can come from anywhere. Leaders, everybody is a leader, right? Using those two, I think teams and organizations should be open to learning from, literally be open to learning from any sort of sources, right?
All right. Well, thank you so much, Venkat. I think that's extremely important. Talking about being open to learn from different sources, different avenues. There are other avenues such as conferences, workshops, webinars, such as this one, will provide leaders with, again, having as agile professionals or product leaders. There's a need to constantly be a learning machine, constantly learning and looking for ways to implement new strategies and approach that facilitates effective delivery. We're going to go next to you, Seti. Seti, I guess question for you is, what are some of the best practices for prioritizing? We talked about product prioritization. You talked about breaking things down into different chunks. What are some of the best practices for prioritizing features and tasks when working with an agile and product mindset? How can teams ensure that they are making data-driven decisions?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question. And Venkat somehow like touched on that in his examples before, but we all trying to find the priority in our roadmap that has the highest value for our customers and get us one step closer to our business goals as any company that we work. I think there's some best practices we can follow that I personally follow in my teams to make the whole like process easier and also more effective. So I think having a product roadmap visualized in a board or something, any kind of tool that you use doesn't matter, but having that in front of the team and everybody who can collaborate to that would be super helpful, both for short-term and long-term kind of roadmap. It's, I think, something it's really valuable to have always a source to refer to. And when you're adding any kind of work item or an idea there, just ask this question from yourself or the team that, is this going to be aligned with our business objective? Is it going to address the customer need? What kind of value impact this new item that I'm adding to my roadmap is going to help us get to the next level or to that success that we are all looking forward? So that helps us to create clear goals and kind of objectives for the team as well. So it's clear for them to know that the work that I'm doing, how it's contributing to the longer term kind of goal or business objectives as a whole. So I think this also helps you to find a way to get feedback as well. So there are a lot of tools out there that you can share the link with the customers, with internal, external stakeholders, and say, you know what is your feedback on it? What is the feature request you think would be beneficial for this market or this customer base? So open that avenue for everybody to contribute and then share their kind of mindset. It really helps to prioritize the roadmap for a product manager or a team in a sense. And also at the end, I think, because we all talked about this data-driven kind of decision-making, that how important it is, use all these kind of analytics tools that it's out there, capture the user behavior, capture the usage adoption, and also at the same time, the retention kind of analytics and data would really help drive that decision-making and prioritizing the features down the road. You also touch on the fact that how we can make sure that we're driving the decision based on data. I personally try to create metrics, define clear KPIs for any kind of success story that I had in mind for the team, so they can always refer to it and then compare their kind of, when they're collecting the data, they can compare to that and say, okay, we are aligned with our plan, we are performing better or we are performing worse, so they can adopt at the same time. And I am a big fan of interviews, user testing, actually talking to customers and users. This open up a lot of kind of opportunities at the same time. It's really eye-opening. Us in product management, well, sometimes we think that we know all the answers, but when you start talking to a customer or end user, and a lot of great ideas or even insightful kind of feedback can open up, and we can leverage to make sure we are delivering that value that we all hope to deliver to our customers. Yeah, I think that's all I can think of right now.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Seti. And it's really important. I know we've talked about, the customer and centric approach to delivering value and ensuring that we're incorporating those feedbacks into the entire process. And of course, we talk about prioritization and task, looking at the different features that's been implemented and having a process in place. You previously talked about some of the processes and tools that you need to have in place to ensure there's an effective prioritization process. Thank you so much, Seti. We will go to you next, Segun. Segun, question for you is, what are some best practices for integrating user feedback into product development process? And how can teams ensure that they're creating products that meets the needs of their users and customers? I know when you started this conversation, you talked about it's all about driving value and, you know, having a customer-centric focus. What are some strategies? Just question is, how can teams ensure that they're creating products that meets the needs of their users and customers?
Absolutely. So I would say that one of the first things you want to have as a best practice, regardless of the level of technology you have available to you, is to design your product, is to build as part of your product design chain or gate process, is to design feedback review or feedback assessment, feedback analysis, either seeking it, either through survey, or being able to scrape. Now that we have technology to kind of scrape data and user reviews from the the worldwide web of available information. So you need to design it into your development process. And I think once you have that, right, then it allows you to start to ask yourself, how many times do you want to stop and assess feedback that you have, or seek feedback that you don't have, and as you go through each of these gates to kind of get closer to finalizing your product. So for us in the consumer goods space, usually, right, we start on the evaluation feasibility stage of things where we're like, okay, is this idea even feasible, right? And there are quick ways to check that. And then you ask yourself, okay, now we've assessed that it's feasible, it can be achieved, that whatever criteria we've set in terms of success criteria for it to be a product that can go to market. Now we're going to more of an evaluation. And really what it means is that you go through each of these steps, you're either committing more funds, you're committing more investment, right? You're committing more resources, more energy towards it to say, okay, this is more viable. So as you go through that evaluation phase, you at some point you get to the execution phase. So by the time you're going to the execution phase, you kind of have a better read of how you expect the consumer to respond, either through consumer focus groups, so seeking that information during surveys, or scrapping data from what's out there in the World Wide Web of consumer feedback, consumer reviews. So we are constantly scrapping data for data, right? Trying to looking for data to kind of make sense of and see what resonates with what we know, right? So we have experts, yes, but how does it resonate with what we know? So for me, it's really a best practice. So it's that ongoing, continuous loop, but like somebody asked the question earlier, not allowing it to slow you down or force you to get stuck, right? But to take it and say, hey, what's relevant here? What can I apply? What can I still influence? Or what do I have to come and pick up at the next opportunity to iterate and improve? So that's been one of the best practices that I've seen be successful, but it's really designing it into your process. If it's designed in there, then it becomes second nature for your teams, or really first nature, where every time you're taking an idea, you're already thinking about, okay, what do I know about the consumer? Ergonomics, experience, performance, and build that into how you expect the consumer to use it. And then you either seek that feedback. And the gift of AI, which we touched on earlier, is that you have a much more efficient, effective way of testing your ideas, testing your solutions, and getting quicker feedback, right? So this helps in terms of agile leadership. When we talk about agility and speed, AI is like a gift there, right? It helps you to be able to get quick feedback, iterate quickly, test it quickly, get feedback, and then make adjustments or validate your assumptions to be able to have a higher confidence level of going to market, and even being able to adjust, right, how you go to market with your information. It helps the marketing teams to know how to present the product and get the consumers, and engage the consumer and retain them, similar to some of the points that have been said there. So for me, that's really key. Feedback is like a gift today, and we have the tools to be able to process that information a lot quicker and build design of experiments to test, validate, and then move quicker. So I know that kind of summarizes it, but I can definitely go a little deeper. But that's been the gift of feedback for us. But you're either seeking it, you're always seeking it, you're doing surveys, or you're taking whatever. Consumers sometimes are so generous, they'll just come back and give you feedback. And that's been the gift of user reviews in the different product spaces.
Excellent. And it's interesting you talk about feedback, and feedback is really critical when it comes to this product development and best practices in delivering a product. and you talked about surveys and also using tools like AI. I want to stay with you, Segun. What are your thoughts around focus groups and using focus groups to facilitate feedback? What are your thoughts on taking that practice? And again, the reason I'm saying this, just thinking about the audience we are on the call, and they have to employ different strategies. Surveys is one of them, but then focus groups. What's your experience when it comes to focus group and implying?
I love the idea of focus groups. I've had the opportunity to participate in a few, and Seti kind of started touching on it, right? That there's something about that human interaction where there are things people will respond to in a survey that when you actually observe them use your product, there are things they're not going to tell you that they did, and the things you're going to observe them do, they're going to realize that. I'm trying to think of a good example here, but like say somebody that is using a mascara brush, right? There are things they're going to tell you about their steps, but when you watch them, you realize that they place it on a certain part of their counter. You realize that they don't put it back in the tube to cover it. And so you start to design your product to be able to stand and be stable on the counter, even though they never told you that, right? And you might see it fall a couple of times, and they just, because it's like, again, it's like unconscious. It's like they just pick it up and stick it in like their toothbrush holder or something. And so taking little like nuggets there, observing the consumer in real time is so valuable, and it's things they can hardly ever tell you. Consumers really see either negative or positive, right? But they don't see sort of the sort of conveniences that are in between. So I'll keep it short in case somebody else wants to chime in with that thought. But yeah, I love the focus groups because they just help you to narrow down and see the unspoken.
Awesome, thanks, Segun. Venkat.
No, I just wanted to say just one more little example to the focus groups idea Segun was talking about, right? This is a very recent experience, as recent as 4 weeks back. And one of my client product leaders was telling me, hey, Venkat, we're looking to, sort of transform the in-shop experience, for our end customers, and I'm looking for ideas and whatnot. And my response was, yeah, I can come back with ideas. I can come back with what we've done for other clients and whatnot. But I told the product lead, that his name is Deepak. Hey, Deepak, why don't you try and spend time in your stores, right? And get a insightful eye into what's happening, right? Or I can do it for you, but maybe you should do it. There's no better way to try and seek what your customers need than being in their shoes and observing, right in the store. I think that led to actually one or two major discoveries, right? That's going to get into the roadmap and whatnot. So I just extend Segun's observation, right? A practical example that happened as recent as like 4 weeks back, right?
Excellent. Well, thanks for sharing that, Venkat. And it's interesting. It just goes to show the human interaction is extremely valuable. As much as we value AI, tools like AI and all the different AI tools that we can utilize for market research, for user feedback, and also to expedite the data, that collection process. I think the human interaction is still very much valuable, and also speaks of a great deal of volume in terms of understanding what our user interaction is and what some of the customer feedbacks that we're looking to derive. Well, we're going to keep moving. We're almost at the tail end here, and I just want to say a huge thank you to the panelists for taking the time to join us on a Saturday and sharing this wealth of knowledge. Before we go, we'd like to hear from the panelists. Any key takeaways, perhaps nuggets that you think the participants can take away from the call today, starting with you first, Seti?
Yeah, I think we touched on a few things, and I think everybody see the pattern, right? So embrace the customer kind of centric mindset, always seek feedback, and then be open to ideas, and then hear it from every type of user base. It could be internal stakeholders, it could be external. We are going to learn from any one of those kind of ideas or feedback items a lot. And then at the end, you as the product lead would be prioritizing that based on the highest value that it's going to bring into the business, and then whichever is more aligned to the business goal and objective, that would be helpful for you to shape your product roadmap. Always go after data and benefit from all these data tracking tools, analytic tools to capture that live in the product. And honestly, be adaptive and open to change. That's inevitable, and then we have to embrace it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Seti. Thank you for taking the time to join us today and for sharing your wealth of knowledge. I'm very positive. I'm taking notes. I'm very positive that the participants have gained a great deal from what you had to share today. We're going to go next to you, Venkat. I see that you've unmuted yourself. So any key takeaways, nuggets, perhaps valuable tips for the Agile professionals on the call today?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try to put the key takeaways around the Agile leadership principles, right? And again, there's a ton of sources of learning what the principles are, what to do with them, and what not, right? Like I'll just say one thing as a key takeaway, right? If you deep dive into the leadership principles, the underlying theme is, hey, it's not just about me, right, anymore. It's actually about taking the focus away from me as an individual to putting the focus on others, including your team, organization, and customer, right? And that's the bottom line, and that's the philosophy there. If you kind of look at it, right, it's there's a lot of selflessness that's needed at the bottom of the leadership principles. And I think that selflessness is what not just the business world and the corporate world needs. I think that's the selflessness that the whole world today needs, right? And that's really my key takeaway.
Wow, that's excellent. Coming from an Agile coach, being a servant leader and being selfless while doing so, and ensuring that we're empowering people, that's a philosophy that works within an Agile environment. It's a philosophy that works within the society. And we talk about interesting. I just want to share a quick story. We're a member of CAMC. CAMC is acronym for the Canadian Aboriginal and Minority Council of Canada. They certify diversity suppliers, and one of the key mandates, they had an annual procurement events earlier this week, and one of the key mandates of the event was ESG, which is environmental, social, and government, which essentially the messaging was how we can operate within a society where business is not just for profit. There's a social component to what we're doing, and the social components also trickles down to how we treat the environment. I think, again, all of those philosophies and foundational values apply deeply into social responsibility, as well as a team. How do we deliver? How do we encourage, empower people as a servant leader? Thank you so much for sharing, Venkat. I'm going to go to you. Last but not the least, Segun. Fun fact, I just want to share, Segun and I, we've known each other for over 20 years, almost 30.
23 years, yeah.
23 years, yeah. We went to the same high school. Just want to share that in King's College, Lagos. We're going to get your thoughts, your key takeaway, Segun.
Absolutely. So I just really love what both Seti and Venkat has touched on. And it's really, we didn't talk a lot about it, but the teams, right? The people, having the right people on your Agile leadership team, having that right mindset, having that clarity of vision. Venkat, you talked about that. And then one thing I would like to add is, practice, the idea of practice, right? And we said it in form of iteration, the idea of practice to drive performance, right? So this ongoing cycle of encouraging your teams to fail. So I like that somebody asked that question, because you don't learn when you're successful, right? You just know you did what you did. But when you fail, you learn what didn't work. And so there's something to be said there in terms of encouraging teams to practice, because as you practice and train those muscles, it becomes more of a way of operating, and you don't have to force it. You don't have to try to instruct it. And this also allows you to stay hungry, to continue to seek knowledge, seek information, because you're constantly practicing and finding gaps or finding loopholes to optimize. So that's another, but that's really for our people, right? To constantly make sure we're caring for our people in the sense of that servant leadership. I love that. It's the only way to operate, right? You lead by example, you serve your teams, and it comes back in full full circle to really continue to uplift the organization and raise the level of excellence that can exist in an organization. So I do want to leave that thought. And I really, I've learned so much from the panelists. So I want to thank you for sharing your knowledge, your experience, your thoughts. And of course, thank you, Ade, so much for inviting me for this opportunity. And I'm really glad to see the impact we can have to the teams that we're able to join.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Shagun. Thank you for your thought leadership. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. We do want to thank all the panelists. Also want to thank all the participants. You guys are the MVPs. Thank you for joining us today. We'll really appreciate it. Well, thank you. I mean, again, there's a lot that we've been pivotal to on the call today. Just want to say a huge thank you to the panelists for taking the time to join us on the weekend. We really appreciate it. I've been taking notes. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to take away. I've been taking notes here today. Value creation, understanding new features and releases, ideas that come from anywhere, understanding that empowering your team. We talked about the 3 E's, enablement, empowerment, empathy, road mapping, breaking things into smaller chunks. There's a lot to unpack here, guys. We just want to say thank you once again on behalf of the OLE team, OLE consulting team. I want to say a big thank you for joining us today. Again, our mandate for the PM Roundtable is to create an avenue where our IT professional community can share information, network, discuss best practices, and present opportunity for career growth. Ultimately, our goal is to raise leaders, and we definitely hope that today's roundtable has contributed to that agenda. We do want to stay in touch. Reach out to us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, OLE Consulting. We're on Instagram, Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. Again, on behalf of the entire OLE Consulting team, we do want to say thank you once again for joining us today. Until next time, be well, stay safe. Bye for now. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.